Alright, hello everybody. Today we're going to be going over when to use Passe composé versus Imparfait with a couple of examples. So for question 1, we have nous avons and then the blank and gâteau pour ton anniversaire. And we're looking to fit the word manger and conjugate correctly in this situation. So we can see that we are trying to say we had eaten a cake for your anniversary, or we had eaten a cake for your birthday. So if you remember, imparfait is something that happened and is something that's continuous. But in this sentence, we're saying we ate the cake. It happened one time and then the action finished. And because the action is finished, it allows us to know that we did passe composé. Because we ate the cake one time. We didn't continue eating the cake, we're not still eating the cake. It already happened, it's over. And question 2 is to blank, and we want to conjugate the word être en bonne humeur. So, if you remember, another rule for imparfait is it's continuous, but it's also an emotion or describing something. And here we're describing this about them. So we are able to know that we put être in imparfait form, which is an irregular one that you just need to memorize, which is été. So tu étais en bonne humeur. Next up, we have elle blank à Paris, and we're trying to conjugate the word aller. Now, aller is a little bit tricky because if we were to conjugate in passe composé, we have to make agreement with the verb or with the subject. If we were to use passe composé with aller, we have to make agreement with the subject as well as conjugate it with être, not avoir, which is a little bit different. But in this scenario, they went to Paris. Is what we're trying to say. That you only go to Paris one time in this scenario. It's not saying we went to Paris every year. There's nothing telling us that. All it's saying is that they went to Paris one time and that's it. Which tells us that we're going to use passé composé. Which, since we're using être, it's going to be sont. And we're going to have aller. But it's feminine plural, meaning we need to add the extra e and s to it. Alright, so question 4 is j'ai with a blank for the verb oublier and appeler toi, which is trying to say I and to forget, which is oublier, to call you. Now this is in past tense, but because we don't know that it finished, it never said that they forgot to call you, but then they remembered at some point. It's just the past, but it's drawn out until today. Because there's nothing telling us that this action has ended. It never says that they stopped forgetting to tell you. We're actually going to use imparfait for this question, which is going to be oublie and then AIS at the end with a U here. So because this question is never saying that something ended, that's the reason it's not passe composé. Now, we have some true or false questions before we get back into the typing ones. So we have j'ai allé à Myrtle Beach. Would this be correct or wrong? Well, what we need to do is we're going to look in passé composé and see that it looks right. It's saying j'ai allé à Myrtle Beach because you went there and we're finished the action. So using passé composé is correct. So we're going to think it's vrai. But it's not, because if you remember from question number 3, elles sont allées, aller, the verb, is actually going to be conjugated using être. So it's not going to be j'ai, it's going to be je suis allé. And since I'm a guy, I don't have to make agreement, but you can if needed to make the sentence better. And now this would be vrai. Now, second question, j'ai écouté à toi. This is going to be correct because if you look, it's saying that you listened to them, you had listened to them, that's finished, you're not listening to them anymore. It's just confirming that you were listening to them. and écouter has the proper ending, and it's conjugated with avoir, which is perfect. Now, next up, we have j'ai été furieuse. Is this right or wrong? Well, if you remember for imparfait, I have it up right here. We can see that one of the things that we use imparfait for is emotions. So, we can see that because it says furieuse at the end, we'll know that it is vrai because we're talking about an emotion. So we must use imparfait, and that's the correct way to write the imparfait for être. Now, we have je mangeais chez Léo à 9h. This one might seem correct because you're saying that you ate Cheerios at 9 a.m., but it's actually not correct because if you look very closely, it says 9 a.m., which I'll highlight right here. Because we're saying 9 a.m., the action we're talking about is completed. So using imparfait doesn't make any sense because if you look here, it says repeating action or a habit or ongoing actions. Well, this isn't an ongoing action because it's completed. We know it's done. So we have to change this into j'ai mangé, the passé composé version. And now it is vrai. And now our last one is quand j'étais jeune. Except we have quand j'étais jeune. And this one actually is correct. It's a very common saying, quand j'étais jeune, and it's saying when I was young. And you're saying I was young because it's the same thing as age. You're not, in French, how it works is you're not saying that you stopped being young because you're still alive. So quand j'étais jeune works because of that. So this one is vrai. Next up, we have j'ai with apostrophe, manger, and la pizza. Now, we have to conjugate it into the correct term. Well, we're going to say that this pizza, we had eaten it already. We don't have infinite pizza, even though that'd be nice. We don't. We only have a certain amount of pizza. So we know that we need to use passé composé, which is the same as one of the questions before, saying j'ai mangé. And now this one's kind of cheating because the answer's up top. But as a little refresher, we're talking about, if we look at imparfait, an emotion, meaning that we have to use imparfait, which is j'étais. And our final one is elle blank in naître, which means to be born. And we're only born one time, so we're going to write elle, and then a, because naître is a part of Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp, which means that it has to be conjugated using être when talking about passé composé. And we're going to write n, e with an accent, which is the form that we use for passé composé for naître. And because it's elle and uses être, we have to make the agreement and add the e at the end.